The sun beat down relentlessly on Elias Thorne's ranch, baking the cracked earth of Rattlesnake Ridge. Dust devils danced across the horizon, mirroring the unease swirling in Elias's gut. For generations, the Thorne family had worked this land, their lives etched into its unforgiving landscape. But lately, something was different. Whispers, like the dry rustle of tumbleweeds, had begun to spread from the nearby town of Redemption. Strange lights in the night sky, cattle behaving erratically, and now, this. He stood at the edge of his largest cornfield, a grim silhouette against the vast Texan sky. Before him, a perfect, intricate pattern was pressed into the stalks, a geometric anomaly that defied explanation. It wasn't the work of pranksters. The sheer scale and precision were unnerving. His foreman, old Jedediah, spat tobacco juice onto the parched ground. "Crop circles, Elias. Just like those folks up north been talking about. Some say it's spirits, others say it's something not from this world." Elias, a man of logic and hard work, scoffed. "Spirits don't flatten corn, Jed, and not from this world is a tale for dime novels." Yet a shiver traced its way down his spine. He'd seen plenty of strange things in his life, but nothing quite like this. The sheriff, a burly man named Brody, arrived an hour later, his face a mixture of skepticism and genuine bewilderment. He walked the perimeter, his boots crunching on the broken corn, a perplexed frown deepening the lines on his weathered face. "Never seen anything like it, Elias. Looks like something big landed here. But there ain't no scorch marks, no debris." As dusk settled, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a chilling sound echoed from the distant hills, a low, guttural moan that seemed to vibrate through the very ground. It wasn't an animal, not one Elias recognized. Jedediah's eyes widened, fear flickering within them. "The Wendigo," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "The old tales. They say it comes when the land is disturbed." Elias dismissed it as the wind, or perhaps a coyote, but the sound persisted, growing louder, more desperate. It was a sound that promised the night would bring more than just shadows to Rattlesnake Ridge. Sheriff Brody, despite his outward skepticism, couldn't shake the image of the flattened corn or the unsettling moan that had pierced the twilight. He rode back to Redemption, the small town a cluster of dimly lit buildings against the encroaching darkness. The townsfolk were already abuzz. The appearance of the crop circles had ignited imaginations, stirring old superstitions and fears. In the saloon, conversations hushed as Brody entered, all eyes turning to the man who represented order in their isolated corner of the West. Martha, the owner of the general store and the town's unofficial source of gossip, approached him, her face etched with worry. "Sheriff, folks are scared. Little Billy told his mama he saw strange lights again last night, over towards Thorne's ranch." Brody sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Martha, those strange lights are probably just heat shimmer. And as for the crop circles, we don't know what caused them yet. Let's not go jumping to conclusions." But the unease was palpable. Stories of strange occurrences, long dormant, began to resurface. Tales of livestock vanishing without a trace, eerie howls echoing through the canyons, and whispers of ancient creatures that roamed the land before the settlers arrived. Brody, a pragmatist, tried to maintain a sense of calm, but even he felt a prickle of unease. He decided to pay a visit to Sarah Jenkins, the schoolteacher, a woman known for her sharp intellect and knowledge of local folklore. Sarah listened intently as Brody described the crop circles and the unsettling sounds, her brow furrowed in thought. "Sheriff, the Native American tribes who once inhabited this land spoke of spirits tied to the earth, guardians who would sometimes manifest in unusual ways when their territory was disturbed. And there are legends, darker ones, of creatures said to inhabit the wilder parts of the territory. She emphasized legends, Sheriff, stories passed down through generations. Yet her thoughtful gaze suggested she wasn't entirely dismissing the possibilities. As Brody left the schoolhouse, the wind picked up, rattling the windows and carrying with it a faint, almost mournful whisper. The shadows in Redemption seemed a little deeper that night. The following morning dawned with an oppressive stillness. The strange moan from the hills had ceased, replaced by an unsettling silence. Elias Thorne rode into Redemption, his jaw tight with worry. He needed answers, or at least some rational explanation for the events on his land. He found Sheriff Brody already dealing with a fresh wave of anxiety among the townsfolk, but then a new crisis unfolded, one that overshadowed the mystery of the crop circles. Mrs. Gable, her face streaked with tears, burst into the sheriff's office. "My Lily, she's gone. She was playing outside this morning near the creek, and now she's just gone." Panic rippled through the small town. Lily was 6 years old, a bright and cheerful child loved by everyone. A frantic search party was immediately organized, consisting of Elias, Brody, Jedediah, and several townsmen. They scoured the area around the creek, their calls echoing through the trees. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher in the sky, casting long, ominous shadows. There was no sign of Lily, no footprints other than her own leading to the creek bank, no discarded toys, nothing. The creek itself was shallow and easily navigable. The disappearance was baffling and terrifying. As the search party widened its scope, Jedediah pointed to a set of unusual tracks near the edge of the woods, not far from where Lily had been playing. They were large, with 3 distinct toes, unlike any animal known to the region. Fear gripped the search party. The legends Sarah had mentioned, the whispers of strange creatures, they suddenly seemed less like folklore and more like a terrifying possibility. Elias felt a cold dread wash over him. The crop circles, the moaning in the night, and now a missing child. Were these events connected? The idyllic image of the Old West he knew was being shattered by an unsettling mystery, and the safety of the community, especially its children, was now in jeopardy. The discovery of the strange tracks sent a wave of fear through the search party. Sheriff Brody, trying to maintain order, examined them closely. "They're unusual," he admitted, his brow furrowed. "Too big for a coyote, not the right shape for a bear." He made plaster casts of the prints, hoping to find some explanation later. The search for Lily continued, but a sense of dread hung heavy in the air. The townsfolk, their initial fear amplified by the mysterious tracks, began to speculate wildly. The image of a monstrous creature lurking in the woods took root in their imaginations. Elias, though deeply concerned for Lily, couldn't shake the feeling that there was a more logical explanation. He remembered the precision of the crop circles, the almost deliberate nature of the patterns. Could a creature that left such crude tracks be capable of creating something so intricate? He kept his doubts to himself for now, focusing on the immediate task of finding the missing girl. As darkness began to fall, the search party returned to Redemption, their efforts fruitless. Mrs. Gable's sobs echoed through the quiet town, a stark reminder of their failure. Brody addressed the worried townsfolk, his voice firm but laced with concern. "We'll resume the search at first light. I've sent a rider to Fort Smith to see if anyone there has encountered tracks like these before." That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the events of the past few days in his mind, the crop circles, the moan, the strange tracks, and now Lily's disappearance. He walked out onto his porch, the vast expanse of the night sky stretching above him. The stars seemed distant and cold. He thought of his own children, safe in their beds. The idea of a creature lurking in the shadows, threatening their innocent lives, filled him with a primal fear. He knew he couldn't rest until Lily was found and the mystery plaguing Rattlesnake Ridge was solved. If you're gripped by the mystery, Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more of this thrilling Western tale. The next morning, while the search party prepared to resume their efforts, Sheriff Brody visited Sarah Jenkins again. He showed her the plaster casts of the strange tracks. Sarah examined them carefully, her expression thoughtful. "These are unlike any animal I'm familiar with," she said. "However, there are some old legends among the Navajo and Apache tribes about creatures said to have walked upright, leaving similar prints. They were often associated with trickery or misfortune." She retrieved a collection of books and scrolls, her fingers tracing ancient symbols and illustrations. "These are just stories, of course," she cautioned. "But sometimes old tales hold a kernel of truth, perhaps a distorted memory of something real." She explained that many Native American legends spoke of encounters with unusual animals or natural phenomena that were later embellished over time. Brody listened intently, trying to reconcile the fantastical elements of the legends with the tangible evidence of the tracks. He knew he couldn't rely solely on folklore to find Lily, but Sarah's insights offered a different perspective, a reminder that the land held secrets older than redemption itself. As Brody left, Sarah handed him a small, intricately woven pouch. "A protective charm," she explained. "It might bring some comfort to Lily's parents." Brody, a man of faith but not superstition, accepted the gift with a nod of gratitude. Every little bit of hope, he thought, might help. Meanwhile, Elias decided to investigate the crop circles more closely himself. He spent hours examining the flattened stalks, noticing the clean breaks and the way the plants were bent but not entirely broken. There was a sense of order, of deliberate design, that seemed at odds with the idea of a large, clumsy creature being responsible. He collected samples of the soil and the damaged corn, hoping to find some clue, some anomaly that might explain the phenomenon. The search for Lily entered its third day, and hope began to dwindle. The rider sent to Fort Smith returned with discouraging news. No one at the fort had encountered tracks like the ones found near the creek. Desperation began to set in among the townsfolk. Mrs. Gable remained inconsolable, her grief a heavy blanket over redemption. As Elias continued his solitary investigation of the crop circles, he noticed something he had missed before. Embedded in the soil, near the edge of one of the intricate patterns, was a small, brightly colored piece of fabric. It was torn and slightly muddy, but he recognized it instantly. It was a piece of the dress Lily had been wearing the day she disappeared. A surge of hope and a fresh wave of determination coursed through him. Lily had been near the crop circles, but why? And how did she end up near the woods where the strange tracks were found? He carefully collected the fabric and rushed back to redemption, his heart pounding. He showed his discovery to Sheriff Brody, who immediately organized a renewed search of the area surrounding the crop circles. This time, they focused on finding more clues, any indication of Lily's path or what might have happened to her. Jedediah, with his keen eye for detail, discovered a series of small, almost imperceptible footprints leading away from the crop circles towards a dry creek bed. They were definitely Lily's. The footprints were faint and intermittent, as if she had been walking slowly and perhaps unevenly. The trail led them away from the woods where the larger, mysterious tracks had been found, offering a glimmer of hope that whatever had made those tracks was not involved in Lily's disappearance. Following Lily's faint footprints along the dry creek bed was a slow and painstaking process. The parched earth offered little in the way of clear tracks, but Jedediah's persistence paid off. They found a small, discarded doll, one Lily always carried with her. The discovery confirmed they were on the right path, but it also heightened their anxiety. Why would Lily abandon her favorite toy? The creek bed wound its way through a series of low hills and dense patches of brush. The search party spread out, their eyes scanning the terrain for any sign of the missing girl. Hours passed under the scorching sun, their hope flickering like a candle in the wind. Just as Brody was about to call for a break, a shout echoed through the dry air. It was one of the townsmen, Caleb. He had found Lily. She was huddled beneath a rocky overhang near a small spring that still trickled water. She was weak and dehydrated, her clothes torn and dusty, but otherwise unharmed. A collective sigh of relief swept through the search party. Mrs. Gable, upon seeing her daughter, rushed forward, embracing her in a tearful reunion. As they tended to Lily, Sheriff Brody noticed something else near the overhang. Several lengths of thick rope, cleverly disguised with natural fibers and tied in intricate knots, lay hidden beneath some loose rocks. He examined them closely, a suspicion forming in his mind. These weren't the crude tools of a wild creature. These looked deliberately crafted. Relieved that Lily has been found? Subscribe now to find out the shocking truth behind the mysteries of Rattlesnake Ridge. Back in Redemption, with Lily safe and sound, her initial tears of fright had given way to exhaustion, but she was slowly able to recount her ordeal. Sheriff Brody, a man whose career had taught him to listen beyond words, paid close attention. Lily, though shaken, described seeing shiny circles in Mr. C. Thorne's field, drawn by their unusual appearance. Her childish curiosity had led her to investigate, venturing deep into the cornfield. There, a group of men, their faces obscured by crude burlap sack masks and dressed in rough-spun clothes, had suddenly emerged. They hadn't touched her, but their sudden appearance and hushed conspiratorial voices had terrified her, sending her fleeing into the hills, where she eventually got lost. She vaguely remembered them carrying coiled ropes and muttering in low tones. Elias's earlier discovery of the torn piece of Lily's dress near the crop circles now made chilling sense. The masked men had indeed been in the field, likely creating the intricate patterns as some kind of elaborate hoax or distraction. But what was their motive? And what about those perplexing three-toed tracks that had fueled the town's fears of a monster? Brody, now armed with Lily's fragmented account, wasted no time. Accompanied by Elias and 2 deputies, he returned to the precise location where the strange tracks had been found. The midday sun illuminated the scene more clearly than before. Jedediah, with his decades of intimate knowledge of the local terrain, squinted at the ground. "Sheriff, look here," he said, pointing. "These tracks, they ain't random. They're too concentrated, and they lead right into that thicket." Indeed, what they had previously dismissed as mere undergrowth now revealed a cleverly concealed cave entrance, almost swallowed by a dense cluster of mesquite and prickly pear. Cautiously, they entered the cave. The air inside was cool, damp, and held the faint, earthy scent of disturbed soil and human presence. Using lanterns, their beams cut through the gloom, illuminating a narrow, winding passage. Deeper inside, the evidence mounted. They found the remnants of a crude, temporary encampment. Discarded food wrappers, empty canteens, and makeshift bedding fashioned from old sacks and straw. Scattered nearby were several more lengths of the same intricately tied rope found near where Lily had been hiding, suggesting a connection. And then their lanterns illuminated the irrefutable proof. A pair of crudely fashioned wooden stilts, each foot carved and weighted, to meticulously resemble the large three-toed prints that had terrified Redemption. The monster tracks were a fabrication, a deliberate deception. The pieces of the bewildering puzzle began to click into place. But the crucial question remained: who were these men, and what desperate motive had driven them to terrorize an entire town? With the shocking discovery in the cave, Sheriff Brody knew he was dealing with human deception, not supernatural occurrences. He and his deputies immediately set a silent watch on the cave entrance, hidden among the thorny bushes, waiting for the perpetrators to return. The hours stretched, filled with anxious anticipation and the buzzing of insects, but their patience paid off. As twilight began to paint the western sky, they heard muffled voices and the subtle rustling of movement from within the cave. Three men, their faces still mostly obscured by shadows but no longer wearing their burlap masks, emerged cautiously. They were clearly unprepared for an ambush. Brody and his deputies moved swiftly, apprehending the trio before they could react. Their faces, now visible, were pale with surprise and a dawning fear of discovery. They wore the same rough-spun, unassuming clothes Lily had described. Under Brody's firm but relentless questioning, conducted back in the confines of the sheriff's office, the intricate truth slowly, painfully emerged. The men were not monsters or agents of the supernatural, but disgruntled farmers from a neighboring territory, their lives recently upended. They explained that they had been ruthlessly swindled out of their ancestral land by a corrupt and influential businessman who operated out of redemption, a man named Horace Gable, who had cleverly manipulated land deeds and legal loopholes. Driven to desperation, and with nowhere else to turn, they had come to redemption seeking not just revenge, but to destabilize the town's leadership and expose Gable's illicit practices. The mysterious crop circles, they confessed, were indeed the first stage of their elaborate, if misguided, plan. They were designed to be an unsettling mystery, a catalyst to sow fear and discord among the townsfolk, hoping to create enough panic that citizens would demand a change in their local authorities, thereby forcing Gable into the open. The eerie moaning sound heard at night was not the cry of a mythical beast, but ingeniously created using a modified hunting horn, carefully amplified by the acoustics of the surrounding hills. Lily's disappearance, they insisted, had been an unintentional consequence. They claimed she had merely stumbled upon them while they were secretly creating the crop circles, and her sudden fright had sent her running off. They had, in fact, been searching for her themselves, albeit clumsily and in secret, using the cave as a temporary hideout. The fabricated monster tracks, created with the wooden stilts, were a desperate last-minute attempt to deflect suspicion from their activities and further fuel the atmosphere of fear, hoping to keep the townsfolk preoccupied while they plotted their next move against Gable. As for the intricately tied ropes, they sheepishly admitted to practicing complex knot-tying as a peculiar pastime. Ironically, the very businessman they were targeting, Horace Gable, was known for his fascination with elaborate knots, and they had planned to use this knowledge to their advantage in some future unspecified part of their scheme, perhaps as a calling card or a symbolic act. With the full, unvarnished truth finally revealed, a profound sense of relief washed over redemption, like a cool breeze after a stifling summer day. The perplexing mystery that had gripped the town for days, the strange lights, the unnerving crop circles, the terrifying tracks, and the missing child, was at last solved. It was a resolution rooted not in supernatural forces or mythical creatures, but in the all-too-human actions of misguided men driven to desperation and a thirst for revenge. Sheriff Brody, a beacon of justice in the small town, ensured that Lily was not only reunited with her relieved and grateful family, but that she received the care and comfort she needed after her ordeal. The three farmers, though their motives were born of injustice, were brought to justice for their disruptive and fear-inducing acts. Crucially, the corrupt businessman they had targeted, Horace Gable, was also subjected to a thorough investigation. His shady dealings, which had long been whispered about but never proven, were finally brought to light, exposed by the very desperation he had created. This led to his swift and decisive arrest, bringing a different kind of justice to the community. Elias Thorne stood in his cornfields once more, the sun setting over Rattlesnake Ridge. The strange patterns in the flattened stalks were no longer symbols of fear, but simply remnants of a turbulent time. The palpable fear that had lingered in the air for days was replaced by a renewed sense of community and resilience. The unsettling events had been a harsh test, but they had also undeniably brought the townspeople closer together, highlighting the enduring importance of reason over superstition and the immense strength found in unity and mutual support. Slowly but surely, life in Rattlesnake Ridge began its return to normal. The whispers of monsters and alien landings faded into distant, almost forgotten memories, replaced by the familiar, comforting sounds of ranching, the rhythmic clatter of the general store, and the joyful, unrestrained laughter of children playing freely in the dusty streets. The entire incident served as a potent and invaluable reminder that sometimes the most frightening and seemingly inexplicable mysteries have very human and ultimately understandable explanations. The vast, untamed land of the Old West certainly held its secrets, but the true strength of the community lay in their collective ability to face the unknown together, armed with courage, a healthy dose of skepticism, and an unwavering commitment to truth. Thank you for following this thrilling tale. If you enjoyed the unraveling of this Western mystery, please subscribe to the channel for more exciting stories.